JDave is back at it, here to give everyone another Scream-related video. In this video, I'm going to be updating my Scream franchise ranking from my least favorite Scream movie to my favorite Scream movie, of course, including the newest installment of the Scream franchise titled Scream, to make it more confusing, otherwise known as Scream 2022, Scream 5, or 5 Cream. Of course, before I get into my ranking, it's pretty important. Obviously, this video is going to contain spoilers. I'm going to talk about each one of these Scream movies, including the newest Scream movie from this year. So, if you haven't watched all 5 Scream movies, I highly suggest that you don't watch this video, simply to avoid any potential spoilers. Also, this will be my personal ranking of the Scream franchise. It, surprisingly, may not be yours, so we may disagree, but that's okay. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Just make sure you leave your ranking in the comments section. It's only 5 movies, so it's not a lot to do. If you're a fan of the Scream franchise, or if you're a fan of JDev TV, make sure you smash that like button. Share the video with anybody that's a Scream fanatic like myself. Sound off in the comments section in addition to your list of what you thought. Let me know what you thought of Scream 2022. And, of course, subscribe to the channel and join the team and show your support. And lastly, I like all these movies. There's not a movie in this franchise that I hate. Unlike Friday the 13th, where I hate Jason Takes Manhattan, and I kind of hate The New Beginning to a certain degree, and Halloween, where I hate Halloween Resurrection. I love all these Scream movies. So just keep that under advisement. I'm ranking 5 movies that I really love. Obviously, some are better than others. So, with that said, let's get into the ranking. Unfortunately, one of these movies has to come in last place. And the Scream movie for me that comes in 5th place has got to be Scream 3. And I feel that this is mostly the general consensus, although there are a few of you that have stated that you really like this movie. In fact, I have somebody that actually has went on record saying that Scream 3 is their favorite Scream movie of all time. Okay, and keep in mind, I like all these films. Again, I just have to pick the one I like the least, and that's why I would go with Scream 3. I'm going to touch on some of the negatives that make this movie the worst one. Neve Campbell's availability. She was only contracted to be on set for 20 days because she had so many other projects going on. The characters in this movie. There were a lot of unmemorable characters in this film that I just hated. Angelina, fake Sydney, terrible. Tyson, funny at times, but in the end amounted to really nothing. And the part where the killer's chasing after him in the mansion, when there's no one else around except the people he knows, he starts running away going, police. In a very soft voice saying police. Do you think the police are just going to magically pull up? Annoys me. John Milton, played by the great Lance Henriksen. I feel like his role should have been a lot more, and that's why he's on the terrible character list. Tom Prince, played the fake Dewey, probably one of the worst characters in the Scream franchise. Didn't do anything at all. His death was stupid. He got burned up, and it was just dumb. Sarah Darling, as much as I love Jenny McCarthy, I thought her role could have been a lot better, but it just was nothing. And she had one of the bloopers in the movie where she's looking for Roman and calls him Ronan, and they didn't edit that. That's a little strange, but the characters are just unmemorable. Not all of them. There are a few good ones that we meet in this movie, and I will touch on them in just a minute here. Also, Kevin Williamson quickly penned a script for this because he was doing so many other projects, but when they looked at it, they decided not to use any of Kevin Williamson's ideas, and Erwin Kruger took over the writing for this movie, and it shows. It's just a completely different movie, although it has some good points. It just lacks Kevin Williamson in this. Courtney Cox, or Gale Weathers' bangs. I did not like her bangs at all. They looked awful, and that's what everybody points out is how Gale looks in this film, and I honestly can't disagree. The opening kill while it was a good kill, you should not have killed Cotton Weary off. I think he could have survived one more movie and then been the main kill for Scream 4. But it is what it is. Those are just some of the negatives for Scream 3 that make it the worst Scream movie. Now, there are some positives. The scenes that we get with Neve Campbell are great. I think the killer reveal with Roman being the killer was very unpredictable. Although, when you have a scene with a killer being accused of calling somebody and then they go in for questioning and then they're released because they realize the calls didn't come from their cell phone or they think they did or it was cloned, typically I think there's the killer automatically because the Billy Loomis had the same thing in the original Scream. But I think he did good. And the whole reveal at the end and the whole fight with Sidney, that was pretty badass. Gale and Dewey, this was obviously their movie with the lack of Neve Campbell in it, and they did pretty good. Other than, again, Courtney Cox's bangs, it was a pretty good performance by David Arquette and Courtney Cox. And then the good characters in this, aside from Roman, I would say Mark Kincaid was good. His partner, which I didn't write it down, I think his name was Wallace. He was funny. He didn't have a big role in the movie, but he's memorable for being kind of cynical, and I like that. Detective Stephen Stone, played by Patrick Warburton, I think he was really good, and I think he should have had an expanded role in this movie. Jennifer Jolie, otherwise known as Jen, played by Parker Posey, she was phenomenal. A little over the top, but she was supposed to be, and I really liked her character, and I think it shows. She was great. She just was loony, and it just worked. I don't know why they killed her character off. She should have survived for another film. So they had a few good characters. They had the stuff with Sidney, and all the moments with Sidney are good, especially that moment where she's like laying in her place, and then we don't realize that she's dreaming, and all of a sudden she hears her mother outside, and then when she goes to investigate, the killer breaks the window, and I was like, shit, they're killing Sidney off right here, right now. So all in all, while it has some good moments in it, especially, Dewey and Gale, Dewey proposes to Gale at the end, it doesn't work. I love it though, don't get me wrong. It just is the worst installment in the Scream franchise, and that's why that's my number 5. The Scream movie for me that comes in fourth place has got to be Scream 4. Now, I feel that there's a huge jump in quality from Scream 3 to Scream 4. And remember, I like Scream 3. But I feel at the moment, at least, that I like Scream 4 quite a bit more. It's just a better written movie. Although it has some flaws that I feel hold it back from being one of the top Scream movies. Notably, the opening kills. Too many kills. Too many fake outs. We need 1 or 2 people in the opening kill. One scene, no different characters. That's it. We don't need kill, 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 kill. We just need a couple or one solo character being killed. That's what we expect in a Scream movie. And then from those opening kills, it goes to like the title and a really weird song to start the movie that didn't sound like anything that would be in an opening for a slasher film. So that, I felt, held it back. The look of the movie just doesn't look like a Scream movie to me. The cinematography is awful in this movie. My opinion, of course. They spent so much time making the audience think that Trevor was the killer, a Billy Loomis lookalike, that I knew Trevor was not the killer, because they really, really hammered you on Trevor being the killer. With that said, I felt that Jill was so predictable as the killer. I knew right away that Jill was the killer, especially when she got her arm sliced. Was it her wrist? Not a wrist, but somewhere on her arm was sliced. I think it was maybe her forearm. I knew that Jill was definitely the killer. As far as Charlie being the other killer, while I wasn't 100% sure that Charlie was the other killer, I felt there were definitely two, and I either thought it was Robbie or Charlie. I was going to go. In fact, I did go with Charlie just because Robbie to me didn't seem like it. I don't know, but the killers were so predictable for me at least. I know some people were thrown off guard by that, but for me it was so predictable to find out or to figure out who the killers are in Scream 4. And the character of Deputy Judy Hicks in this movie was very creepy, strange, and annoying, and I could have done without her in this movie. So those are just a few things. Well, actually, the whole scene at the barn, the Stabathon, it just didn't seem like something that should have been in the movie. It should have been just at somebody's house and not like in the middle of nowhere. And I don't think that worked well, especially with Gale Weathers poking around out there. I don't know. My opinion again. What I did like about Scream 4, I think for what time they had in the film, Sidney Prescott, Dewey Riley, and Gale Weathers did a really good job. Gale Weathers, of course, was barely featured in my opinion, but they did good for what they had, especially that last scene. I also felt the movie went on too long. Like they could have cut it short at the Kirby's house, and they did, but that's another story. Speaking of Kirby, one of the bright spots in Scream 4 and the Scream franchise, Kirby. Now, as far as I know, especially from what they said in Scream 2022, an Easter egg, Kirby Reed is a survivor and still alive. That would have been a negative had she been confirmed to be dead, but as far as we know, we didn't, as Kirby got stabbed, as the camera panned away from her and went to the next scene, she was still moving, so we didn't see her death scene. It was supposed to be her death scene. Kevin Williamson wrote it like that, but Wes Craven changed it to have that because he wanted, I'm sorry, Wes, I didn't mean to call you she. He wanted her to be in the next movie, which has not happened, but we might get Kirby back in the 6th installment of the Scream franchise. Whatever they want to call it, maybe Scream Kills, copy Halloween, we'll see. So that definitely is a bright spot. Kirby was awesome in this movie, but it just didn't feel right to me because of the look of the film, the songs they chose, especially the opening sequence after all the fake out kills and so that's why I decided to put Scream 4 as my number 4. The Scream movie that comes in third place for me has got to be Scream 2022. This movie has actually exceeded my expectations, which were not low by any means. I've seen it twice so far. Even liked it better the second time around where I could just relax and not have to think of so much stuff. And for a brief moment, I even considered putting this at number 2. However, the movie has some things that really get on my nerves. The killers were so predictable. Within a minute of him being on screen, I knew that Richie was definitely one of the killers. And then the movie focuses around all these people that are related to people from the first Scream movie. And there's 2 characters that are still like featured in the movie that aren't. So I'm like, okay, one of them has to be the killer. Either Liv or Amber. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I picked Amber simply because she had more to do with Tara, Jenna Ortega's character. And lo and behold, I was right. So very predictable in terms of who the killer was. I guess Amber was a little less predictable than Richie. I just knew Richie had to be in on it. Unless they threw in like some random character that had like a minute of screen time, which could happen in a Scream movie where you have somebody that's been hardly featured in the movie be a killer, like a background cop or something like that. But so far, they haven't done anything like that. The opening of the movie, while great, it was great to hear Roger L. Jackson like talk and talk and talk. But the killer didn't actually kill anybody in the beginning of the movie. Severely injured Tara's character, Jenna Ortega, but no death. How do you not have a death in the opening of a Scream movie? Why would you do that? I don't know. Maybe they wanted somebody else for that scene and that person didn't sign on, or there were rumors that Selena Gomez was supposed to be the opening kill, and I guess that never formulated. I don't know, but that was surprising that they did not have an opening kill. And then, while this necessarily isn't a negative, to some people it could be, killing Dewey, it was a sad moment. I was more sad when Gail was sitting there thinking about it, and then Sydney shows up and said, I heard about Dewey and I came right away. That's what made me the most sad, seeing their reaction. I think it would have been better if Gail would have saw Dewey die. That would have had a more impact for me. But personally, myself, I wouldn't have killed Dewey in this movie. I would have killed Gail. It's probably an unpopular opinion. Well, actually, maybe it's not an unpopular opinion. I think Dewey is one of the hearts and souls of the Scream movies, and Gail is not, although maybe she is. I don't know. In my opinion, she's not. So I would have killed Gail, not Dewey. Despite this movie having some flaws or negatives, I think it has quite a bit of positives. Some of the characters are really good in this movie, especially Mindy and Chad Meeks, the relatives of Randy. And they even have a tribute to Randy where they're at, which was awesome. But I really liked those characters. Now, at the end, in the final act, or it wasn't necessarily the final act, but at the final place in the movie, they both get stabbed. Chad, pretty bad. Mindy, not so bad. And then they just kind of disappear. I'm like, okay, they're not going to be the killers because they're related to Randy, unless they're not related to Randy. So they're just probably writing them off so they can come back in the next movie. And sure enough, at the end of the movie, they're both on gurneys getting into ambulances and they're alive. So I like those characters, especially Mindy, as I think she's definitely the new Randy, and she's pretty good. Also, there's mentions or Easter eggs of characters that we like a lot, such as when Dewey calls Sydney, he asks, "How's Mark?" I'm guessing he's referring to Mark Kincaid from Scream 3. There's also an Easter egg when Richie is watching the stab videos on YouTube and he's talking to Sam on the phone at the same time. Not stab videos, stab movies, I'm sorry. And when he's talking to her, you notice that the next video that's going to play, I don't remember the exact title, but it says something to the degree of Interview with Survivor Kirby Reed. So they are confirming in this movie that Kirby is alive and hopefully will return for the 6th installment of the Scream franchise. So that's awesome. I think also the characters that returned in this movie were pretty awesome. You got Martha Meeks coming back, which I knew was going to happen, but then we thought maybe she wasn't going to be in the movie and they decided her scenes weren't important enough. And then, of course, you had the surprise cameos of Billy Loomis, which I did not know that Billy was going to be in this movie, and I did not know that he had a daughter that we didn't know about. I thought that Vince was going to be a son that we didn't know about for Billy, but they fooled us on that one. So that was interesting. I think this was a good movie for our returning cast members, and I feel like there's no need to have any of them return again. Obviously Dewey died, although I could see him coming back in like flashbacks or hallucinations for maybe Sam, possibly Tara. It's possible, maybe not, but I feel like David Arquette would want to do that if they asked him to do that. But I feel the end of this movie was a send-off to Gail and Sydney. That's what I get from it. I don't know, but you can always have Kirby come back and be in the next movie to help out and make the movie bigger than what it is. But I feel like it was a good send off to Gale and Sydney, and they were both badass in this movie. Sydney was, although she's not featured a lot, she was really good in that third act. And I must say, it was really awesome when Sam is stabbing Richie over and over and over again, saying you don't fuck with a serial killer's daughter. And after she slits his throat and then goes like this with the knife that the killer usually does. That was awesome. Are we setting Sam up to be an actual killer in one of these movies? That's something that they haven't done yet before. They haven't had the main character be the killer, because Sydney's always been, the main character. So all in all, Scream 2022 is a lot of fun. I'm getting a little tired recording this video, so I'm starting to fuck up what I want to say, but I enjoyed it. I've seen it twice, and it definitely lived up to the hype and the expectations thus far, and it gave me some hope that Kirby will be back. Although I'm mad that she wasn't in this one, but I'm guessing that she'll be back in the next one. Another thing that I actually liked and kind of disliked, I like the fact that they killed off Judy Hicks, because I never really liked her character. And it seemed like she was supposed to be one of the killers for maybe one of the movies that followed Scream 4, had Wes Craven been able to do a sequel right away to that. But I'm surprised they killed Wes, Dylan Minette's character. I didn't expect him to die. That was a little surprising. In fact, I could easily see him being the other killer, because he's the one that called Sam to have her come back to Woodsboro. So, I don't know. It is what it is. I'm not the one that makes the decisions on the movie, but all in all, I was very satisfied, and that's why I chose Scream 2022 as my third favorite. The Scream movie for me that I'm choosing to finish in second place, which will let you know what my first place movie is, assuming you're paying attention, for me has got to be Scream. That's right. I'm choosing the original Scream to only come in second place. Very unpopular opinion. Unfortunately, I've always held number one in higher regard. This movie is near perfect. It's groundbreaking for horror. It revitalized the horror movie genre when it came out, and it did so well. It's just a little bit behind number one for me. There's a few flaws, for me at least. Some people, they don't notice these things, but for me, that hold it back. The first thing is that the killer reveals were so predictable. I knew for certain that Billy Loomis was one of the killers. It just, especially though those calls didn't come from my cell phone. We found out Billy didn't make those calls. It was from a clone cell phone. So obvious that Billy was the killer. Now, as far as Stu, that wasn't as obvious, but there's a scene where they're talking outside where they're like, Stu, didn't you used to date Casey Becker? Yeah, for like 2 seconds. That right there just made me like tie in everything, and I'm just like, Stu might be in this. I don't know. I think he has something to do with it. And sure enough, he's one of the killers. Now, for other people, you might not have had a clue who the killers were in Scream. I wish I had that experience, because I like it better when I'm not sure who the killer is, which in most of these movies, I guess pretty quickly. It's just a talent that I have. I guess my grandma and me used to watch Murder, She Wrote together a lot, and I solved a lot of those episodes with help from my grandma over the years, and then eventually I got to be on her level where she would, figure out who the person, and yeah, let's not talk about Murder, She Wrote, but that's how I guess I'm good at this sort of thing. But another thing about Scream that bothers me is some of these characters are kind of bland, boring, and unlikable, or not really important to me. Like Dewey. Unfortunately for all you Dewey lovers, in the first Scream movie, Dewey is a fucking idiot. I don't like Dewey at all. And it's no wonder why they spoofed him and made him Doofy in Scary Movie. Obviously, Dewey gets way better in Scream 2. Gail, not a big fan of Gail Weathers in this movie. She's very unlikable. To a degree, at least for the first like half an hour of the movie, Sydney. The part where Sydney's talking on the phone to Ghostface and she's like, "What am I doing? Hello, what am I doing?" From that point on, Sydney's fine. But before then, I didn't really give two shits about Sidney Prescott in this. So those are the big three for this movie that, have at least Gale and Dewey that I didn't like. And that's kind of what holds it back. I mean, it's not a lot. Predictability with the killers and a couple characters that are, kind of on the fence of, I'm not really liking, this Dewey character and this Gale character. Even Billy Loomis, to a degree, I thought Billy Loomis was kind of like, I could care less about him. But those are the only things that really, at least at the moment that I'm thinking of, that I really have a problem with. Now, obviously, there's lots of things to like about this movie. Even though the killers were, in my opinion, relatively easy to figure out, that whole final act was fucking brilliant. I loved it. I loved the dialogue, especially from Stu. Stu, despite being a killer, he's so likable. The things he says. "Oh, what made you do it, Stu? What are you going to tell him?" "Peer pressure." "Did you really call the cops?" "My mom and dad are going to be so mad at me." He's just, "Dude, I'm feeling woozy here." And he's so hilarious. I think a lot of that stuff was actually ad-lib too, what makes it even better. So that's the final act of the movie. All those characters did really well in the final act. I am mad. I guess this should have been a negative. Why would you kill Tatum off? I don't think you should kill Tatum. She's Sydney's best friend. And she was fucking amazing, I thought. Tatum is one of the best characters in Scream, in my opinion. And I felt like her character met her demise too quickly. Like, I don't know why they decided to keep Dewey around and kill off a character like Tatum. It just, I don't know. And she had great lines too. I loved her lines. But obviously, the final act of this movie is what really makes this movie. And the opening scene. The opening scene is one of the best opening scenes in a movie. And I'm not a big Drew Barrymore fan, but Drew Barrymore in this opening scene killed it. And it was brutal. Her boyfriend, Stephen Orth, his death, and Casey Becker's death were both brutal, amazing, and it's something I always think of. Like, if you ask me what's the best opening in a movie, I think Scream might come to mind. So that's why I chose Scream. Unfortunately, is only my second favorite. The Scream movie that I'm choosing to be my number one, and this will come to no surprise for most of you, it's gotta be Scream 2. No surprise. I absolutely love Scream 2. It's my favorite horror movie of all time. And a quick story about it. So that was going to be the first Scream movie I was going to see in the theater in 1997. Me and my friend Chuck got dropped off at the theater, and we were standing in line to get tickets at the box office window. The second I get up to the ticket window, they say, "We're sold out." At that point in time, I'm not a Scream fanatic. I didn't appreciate the original Scream enough at that point in time. I had just seen it. I think I saw it a week before we went to see Scream 2. I, of course, saw it at that time, VHS. I'm aging myself there. And so they're sold out. So we're still talking about it as we turn to walk away. And then these two girls that appear to be close to the same age as we are, because we're both in high school at the time, they say, "Are you guys looking for tickets?" And then my friend Chuck's like, "Yeah, we are, but they're sold out." Well, we're kind of thinking about not going to this showing and going to the 9:45 or 10 o'clock showing, Do you want to buy our tickets? So obviously, in this day and age, or this year, we're talking about 1997. Movie prices weren't as expensive. It was like, I think, $7 or $8 a piece for tickets that night. I just so happened to have $40 on me, and one of them said, "We'll sell each of our tickets to you for $20 a piece." And I'm like, well, but I did it. I gave my $40, and me and my friend Chuck saw the movie, and I fell in love with the Scream franchise watching Scream 2. And that may be why I hold Scream 2 in such high regard as my favorite Scream film. But I do love this movie. Now, there are flaws with Scream 2. I will say that. Okay, let's address the elephant in the room. They killed off Randy. It made the movie memorable, but that's just something you don't do. But it was great how it happened, but it sucked that it did happen. So that's obviously a negative. And then the thing it's not a huge negative in the movie, but I didn't care for all the scenes when Sydney's doing her theater with the play Cassandra, with the drama teacher. I felt that was all thrown in there and made me think that the drama teacher was the killer or one of the killers in the movie. That was what I was thinking. So all that stuff was kind of a waste of time to me, because all of a sudden Sydney's now an actress. At what point in Scream did she ever say anything about being an actress? Randy was the smart one that was going to college. We never heard anything about Sydney, but apparently things change after the Billy Loomis and Stu Macher massacre. So those are the two negatives I have about Scream 2. This movie has a lot of positives. Of course, the opening scene with Omar Epps and Jada Pinkett Smith was great. I don't think it was near as great as the Casey Becker scene, but Maureen Evans and Phil Stevens, it was entertaining. Although I feel like Jada Pinkett overacted a little bit. And of course, okay, this is, I guess, a flaw. How did the killer know that Phil Stevens was going to go in the bathroom and put his ear up to that stall at that time? Okay, that's a flaw. I admit it. But I thought it was done very well with, like, the killer putting on his clothes and then coming out there and just sitting there with the ghost face mask on, and then Maureen realizing that there's, like, blood all over him. So that was pretty awesome. The characters in this movie are phenomenal. The characters that we already knew, Dewey, way more improved. Gail, way more improved. Well, initially kind of the same, but then she gets way better. Sidney Prescott is amazing in this movie. Randy is even better in this movie. He was one of the highlights in Scream as well, and I forgot to mention that. So they were all awesome. But our new cast of characters, even though we didn't get a lot of time with her, Cece Cooper, Sarah Michelle Gellar, she was awesome. She got killed kind of brutal, though. Not sure why the killer targeted her, but that sucked. We have Joel, the cameraman. He was funny. He had one of the funniest parts in the movie when Hallie says, "Did you get that on film?" "Yes, I got that on film." I love that line. He was just funny. I need something a little bit more Saved by the Bell-ish, and I should have read your book. I love Joel. He's one of my favorite characters in the Scream franchise. I don't know where exactly he places, but he's memorable, and he better fucking come back at some point in time. You have Mickey, who's great. You have Derek, who's pretty awesome as well. You have Sister Lois and Sister Murphy. Okay, they're kind of lame. Hallie, we should have got to know Hallie a little bit better. I think Hallie would have been way more memorable had they maybe casted the role of Cece and Hallie as the same character instead of two different characters where they have to take up extra time. Just a thought. You have the appearance of Mrs. Loomis, or Debbie Salt. She was kind of hyper. That's what I'll describe her, but she was great. This cast of characters, and I'm sure I'm forgetting someone too. I hope not, but I'm sure there's someone obvious that I'm not mentioning. Cotton Weary in this movie. God, I almost forgot about Cotton. Cotton goes from like a cameo on TV to an awesome character in one movie. And obviously, yeah, we'll get into that. So we have all these great characters, but then we also have this movie is not predictable at all. I have no idea who the killer is because I think it's the drama teacher. I think it's Cotton Weary. I think it's Joe the cameraman because they're all wearing the same shoes. And we don't really know anything about Cotton. He's a criminal. He was in jail, wrongfully accused, apparently, but, you know, and it it certainly made things interesting. And then, of course, the suspicious Derek, the boyfriend, I'm suspecting him, but at no point in time did I suspect Mickey. And looking back on it, especially the scene where Derek, sings, I think I love you, but what am I so afraid of? He seems, Mickey, so happy that this is going on. Like he feels like genuine happiness for Sydney. And I wonder if they changed the script after that, because obviously things were leaked. Because I heard that Derek and Hallie were supposed to be the killers in Scream 2. I wonder if that scene was already filmed and, at that time, Mickey wasn't the killer of the movie. Just a hunch, because if you watch him, he's so happy and he feels so good for Sydney and Derek in that scene, and I just feel it's odd. I did not suspect Mickey at all. Even though he disappeared for a while, I didn't suspect him at all. I honestly did. Now, I will say this. I kind of, slightly suspected Debbie Salt. Just because she'd randomly show up, talk to Gail, and then talk to nobody else. I thought that was kind of suspicious, but I didn't really think she was the killer. Now, had Gail said, "Oh, hi, Mrs. Loomis," if she knew who she was, then I'd be like, "Oh," but we didn't know that, obviously, until the end. So, this movie, in my opinion, was not predictable. I know some people say that they knew Mickey was the killer. I didn't know. So there's that. I love the final act of this movie. Now, I'm a little upset that Debbie, or Mrs. Loomis, kills Mickey. That's a flaw, I think, in the movie. A very minor flaw. That's one thing that's good about Scream 2022. Richie and Amber, they're on the same page the whole time. They don't kill each other. Billy and Stu, yeah, they kind of don't really like each other, it seems like. Jill kills Charlie because she wants to be the superstar, the main attraction. She wants nobody else to get any attention. But unfortunately, Debbie kills Mickey, or at least she thought she killed Mickey. So that was great. The whole courtyard scene with Randy talking to Ghostface, or just that whole scene in general, like, Gail's phone keeps ringing and she's getting pissed, and then like she's kind of ignoring it when it rings again. This is customary when I've been talking for a while. I've been recording this video for 5 hours off and on, and my nose itches from time to time. There's no cocaine involved at all in this. Actually, my mustache is itchy now, not necessarily my nose. Do it one more time. Get all my itches out of the way. That whole courtyard scene was awesome. When Randy picks up the phone, it's him. He can see us. Let them have their fun. And then just what's your favorite scary movie? Showgirls, absolutely terrifying. And you want to be the one of the big boys, Manson, Bundy, OJ, and I'm not interrupting anybody. And then you'll never get the girl. Fuck you. I love that scene. Now it sucks that Ghostface or Debbie or Mrs. Loomis pulls Randy into the news van and slices and dices Randy. But that whole scene was awesome. And then you have the scene before that with Randy and Dewey, going over the rules of a sequel. And, well, let's check out the suspects. And, he goes, Mickey, the freaky Tarantino film student. But if he's a suspect, I'm a suspect. So let's move on. But maybe you are a suspect. Well, if I'm a suspect, you're a suspect. All that stuff was great. I enjoyed a lot of it. And they even paint Dewey to be the killer at one point in time. I didn't really believe Dewey was the killer, but I had a very small, what do we know about Dewey? Maybe he's not right from the last Scream movie, and he's a mass murderer. But all in all, I could ramble about Scream 2 a lot. I guess, yeah, I'm going to cut this rant of loving the movie short. You already know I love Scream 2, And that's why I chose Scream 2 as my number one. So, if you're a fan of Scream, if you're a fan of JDev TV, or a fan of anything else I do, if you love the Scream movies, make sure you smash that like button. If you want to share this video across any of your social media platforms or with that friend that you know that loves the Scream series, go ahead and share the video. If you want to sound off in the comments section, by all means do so. I want to know your ranking of the Scream franchise. We're just talking about the movies, not the TV shows. Although I did watch the first 2 seasons of MTV Scream, I was mildly entertained by them. They're not great by any means, but I just a little bit like them. And of course, last but certainly not least, this is a lot of effort to do a video like this, and I've been doing a lot of videos that take a lot of effort lately, and I think I'm going to kind of scale back and do some easy videos for like a week just so I can refresh my brain here. But don't forget to hit that sub button, subscribe to the channel. It helps me out. I need you to do that for me. I can't just make you subscribe. Join the team, show your support, and be a part of something special. And JDev is going to get some sleep, and he'll be back again soon.